Christ Center presents Let's Talk About Love, a program focusing on romantic and family relationships. Our church is located at 1615 West Shelton Avenue in the heart of West Oak Lane in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania 19126. Our phone number, 215-LIVRITE, Live Right. Our teacher is pastor and counselor and 8-time author, Dr. David R.L. Stevens. This is a listener-supported program. All donations should be made out to Christ Center Church of God and Mark Radio. And now, here is our teacher, Dr. Stevens.
Good morning again. This is Pastor Stevens. Welcome to Radio's Fastest 15. The name of this program is Let's Talk About Love, and I'm reading and sharing from my book, Marriage: Catching a Second Wind. Of course, that's not the newest book, but the information is still good. And last week I was sharing the fact that I was counseling a couple who had some problems after they had had several sessions, and I missed them and wondered where in the world were they. So I asked the person who recommended them to me where they were, and they said, oh, they liked you and all of that, but they thought that your advice to them, your counseling to them, was old school, so they decided not to come back anymore. Well, I kind of wondered about that. I'm thinking, well, I've done everything that I know to do to keep up with what's going on and to give some solid answers, and I came to the conclusion that it wasn't me. It was the information, and the information that I was sharing with them comes strictly from the Word of God. So, I have some problems with the contemporary Christians who seem to want everything according to their comfort level, but don't really want to hear what God has to say about it. So the title of this chapter that I started is Old School, New School, and I spell school, New School, N-U SKOOL. So that'll give you a clue as to where I'm going. All right, New School wants to soften the lines of a picture. There may be some question about a definite male role and a definite female role in its view. It all depends. New School usually wants to use all of the crayons in the box as an expression of freedom and creativity. Old School usually wants to rely heavily on the use of the black and white crayons. They represent order and discipline. The more biblically correct way is to use all the crayons with careful caution. I've watched children color all over the place to make a picture. I've also watched those children that were a little more talented provide a black outline around the shapes and carefully color within those lines. As an artist, I never colored that way, but I've always noticed that the folk who did seemed to turn out pictures that look so much more orderly and disciplined. So in reality, it should be a type of harmony from both schools of thought. What happened here with Teddy and Diane, we have some God-given role assignments. When we operate within those assignments, things will generally go in a balanced fashion. When we step away from those roles, life is thrown into a confused pattern. When a wife works with and supports her husband and family head, the system generally works well. It's all right to be somewhat flexible in living your lives, but even flexibility needs to be guided by careful structure. The roles are assigned by God. Blurring the guidelines only encourages eventual chaos. If you'll remember from last week, I talked about Teddy and Diane, that Teddy, the head of the home, didn't really live up to his responsibility. He put everything on Diane and wanted her to make all of the decisions, and he just about burned her out from not supporting her as her family head. And that's, of course, not the way that God planned it. I remember Bernie Glantz, a retired principal, up on his soapbox one day challenging summer camp counselors about rudderlessness. If you have a plan that is not well structured, going nowhere, it has no rudder. If you continue to maintain that state, you are living in the state of rudderness. And I can remember old Barney just really doing that thing up. He painted a mental picture of a boat spinning and going nowhere because it lacked a plan to go somewhere. Think of a life without a structure, direction, or purpose. Old Barney would say that life was without a rudder. He called it rudderlessness. Rudderlessness, if we apply Dr. Glantz's philosophy to marriage leadership, then there must be a leader with a viable plan in the home. The leader should be the husband. Along with the leader, there must be a willing team. You cannot lead those who refuse to follow. However, for marital success, they should make their life approach together with one voice. Did you hear me? One voice. Men, here's an old school headline for you. God appoints you as the physical, spiritual head of your family. You can't bury your hands in your pockets, haunch your shoulders, and drift out to lunch. Your family is looking to you for honest leadership. You are not going to be right, always right, but by being prayerful and honest, you can lead your family. God will guide you if you let him, but he does not force you to do it. As men, we need to do as the late Dr. Bob Cook, former president of King's College, used to say, pray your way through the day. I like that. Pray your way through the day. By doing this, we will minimize the areas of mistake. Teddy's reluctance broke his wife down until she decided that if she had to do the whole thing, she might as well do it alone. This was tragic for Diane and the whole family. Teddy just never got it. He just went his way, blaming his ex for the marital breakdown. Let's look at another area of potential disaster. When an overzealous wife takes over and minimizes her husband's lead, she causes chaos to reign. This action will often cause her husband, if he tends to be rather mild-mannered, to retreat and become counter-effective. On the other hand, if he tends to be more aggressive, a battle will ensue, which no one can win. Also, Vincent was not allowed to be the man in his house. From day one in their marriage of 1 year, he was told where to put his shoes, park his car, and how much he could eat. Mindy was controlling and domineering. She was a career woman making a pretty decent salary, and so Mindy managed to buy her own place before she was in her early 30s. Every extra dime she could make was saved for her home. She became engaged to Vincent after having lived in her place for about 3 years. She treated her new husband as if he was her child. When she was not barking orders at him, she was complaining about something he did or failed to do. Mindy never found an occasion to applaud one thing her husband did. After a while, he just gave up trying. What's the use? He was overheard saying on more than one occasion. To the fellows in his church, his men's group, she thinks he said this to his men's group, she thinks I'm some little kid. It's her house, her furniture, all hers and none of mine. Lately, I've been thinking that even though I really love her, I should just get out of her house. The house seems to make her happier than I do. Carl and Dina are a perfect example of a marriage gone wild. Both were aggressive and often relentless in their aggressiveness. Their marriage came unglued because neither would retreat. Carl had many stable ideas and wanted to lead, but Dina felt like she had a better insight. She found every reason imaginable to disavow her husband as a capable leader. Carl grew up in the streets of a big city where he had to scrap for everything he had. So he was not about to give up any territory. Rather than find a compromise, they continued to wage warfare in their family. If Carl said yes to his teenage daughter's request, it was very likely that Dina would say no, and vice versa. They never seemed to want to be on the same page. Somebody has got to have a final say in the household. The head of the home should be that final voice. However, leading up to that final voice, there should be a whole series of consultations where all the pros and cons are examined. Both people should have an equal voice in the deliberations. Argumentation is seldom the answer. The final decision should be a blending of ideas and feelings. The final words should be based on the best of both worlds. My wife has more of a tendency to trust my judgment when she knows that I have included her and included her best thought into my final decision. I try never to trash her idea and uphold mine. After all, it is called marriage. Perhaps New School would take odds with what I've just said. New School wants the male role to blend the lines of authority. New School wants to share equally to the responsibility of leadership. Now, I'm not in total disagreement about sharing leadership, but there are different assignments within that leadership bundle. When the father speaks, it should be clear and pretty decisive. The mother's role should be just as clear and decisive in support of what that father has said. However, this kind of presentation must have been already agreed upon after the two have agreed to be on one accord. In other words, the father's voice should not just represent himself, but the family and the family position. Even more than that, he must represent the family's heart. In order to do that, he must make every effort to know and feel that heart of the family, to speak for it. A man is probably going to view the situation from a man's perspective. That's only natural. Just give me the bottom line. I want to deal with the facts, and nothing but the facts, ma'am. However, he must allow himself the opportunity to hear it from his wife's perspective. After all, this is called marriage. Did you hear me? This is called marriage. Thinking as an independent is not the way to much success. The strongest voice is made up from the most comprehensive view, which should be the two of them looking at it as partners. Examine the whole of the matter and reach for the best conclusion. Don't make a rash decision based on very limited view of one person. Actually, the Bible in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 12 says that a threefold or three-strand cord is difficult to break. The principle here is that God wants to be in the mix. Again, listening to God through prayer is vital. Well, listen, I'm looking at the clock, and it's just about that time that we've got to quit and get out of here. But I want you to be responsive to this. You can reach me at ccenter22cog at gmail.com. You can also reach us by phone, 215-548-7483. Okay, until next time, so long.
We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Let's Talk About Love. This program has been presented by Christ Center Church of God, 1615-19 West Shelton Avenue in the heart of the West Oak Lake section of Philadelphia. Our speaker has been Dr. David Stevens, pastor, counselor, and award-winning author. This radio program is listener-sponsored, and we do solicit your prayers and donations. See you next time on Let's Talk About Love.